The distinction between sex and gender is familiar in our social scientific practice and normative theorizing. We think of it as an achievement of 20th century feminist theory. Surprisingly enough, in the 18th century already, Bernard Mandeville published a book, The Fable of the Bees, in which the distinction is already fully present. The Fable of the Bees was a controversial and scandalous book because, to simplify, it argued that in order to have public wealth, people needed to pursue their vices and immoral behavior. In that book, Mandeville analyzes gender construction for men and women. He emphasizes the way in which gender roles oppress both sexes. This I found very surprising, and I wondered what elements of his methodological outlook made him so sensitive to this aspect of our moral phenomenology. So my question became, what methodological commitments drove Mandeville into distinguishing between sex and gender? The answer to this question is what I call methodological analytical egalitarianism, or May. Mandeville applied May to himself and to his analysis of sex relations in his society. So remember, in the 18th century, England was developing a commercial environment, but feudalism and social hierarchies were rampant. Now, surprisingly enough, Mandeville, when applying May, realized that gender stereotypical behavior is the product primarily of social conditioning. He is very clear that this is true as much as it is for women as it is for men. Crucially, this conditioning doesn't amplify nature itself, but is primarily based on lies and flattery. He explains how young girls are taught to admire jewelry and other aesthetic features by flattery and excessive praise. Now, for Mandeville, this is not a way to censor young women, but to make everybody aware that we have all these very normal mechanisms by which we're conditioned to take on gender roles. He is absolutely explicit that these gender roles generate what we would call a false consciousness. Rather than using this theory of false consciousness as a way to deny agency, Mandeville thinks that in fact, once we know it, we can try to find ways to condition ourselves differently. The reason I'm excited about Mandeville's analysis of social constructivism is really twofold. First of all, it reminds us that feminism is not just a 20th century and 21st phenomena. But second of all, he himself doesn't think of himself as superior to the young woman he studies and also treats as a doctor, but rather he wonders in what ways he himself is implicated in the system of social hierarchy. And then once he asks that question, he's actually capable of looking at people's behavior as being informative of their own lived experience. And I think that's really what we're after when we're doing social science.